Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Tuba People TV, where we talk about Arnold Jacobs all of the time. Puddles and I are in the tuba and euphonium studio here at University of Oregon in lovely Eugene, Oregon, with Mr. Sam Pilafian.
And I mean, lovely, like 72 degrees.
And sunny.
And perfect. What's with the web foot thing? It's like dry here. The sky's high today.
It is. It is. It's admittedly not that way all the time, but we'll take it while we got it.
I've heard.
Yeah. So Sam is a longtime teacher of mine, even though not officially in the studio ever. But when I was coming up as a very young tubist, I managed to get my hand on what we call the Black Album. We all know the Beatles' White Album.
The Black Album.
But this is called the Black Album. And just listening to you on this was so inspirational and educational. This is actually my third copy because the first two I wore out.
That makes you the grandson of Harvey Phillips, because I had a similar experience with a thing called, you remember, on RCA called Baroque Brass,
yeah,
which was New York Brass Quintet, and I heard him play small C tuba with this elegance and this lift, you know, that was, I can still remember it. I know exactly what chair in the library I was sitting in.
Yep. But
that's
a great album.
Ear role models are unforgettable. So this is what happened next, was the actual, that's what got me toward chamber music and the whole life of smaller things. Good thing, because I never got any bigger. But the idea of Empire Brass was to allow the other people to be in the Boston Symphony. So we modeled on the Chicago Symphony Brass Quintet and some on the New York Philharmonic one with Vacchiano and William Bell,
yeah,
where their scale was up to such that they could go back to work and be fine. So it wouldn't be miniature and oversized. A lot more familiar experiences were happening,
mm-hmm,
with the movement of the air and the nobility of sound. And what we learned was we don't have to play for the focal point. We don't have to blow to the focal point just above the group, let's say, or just out in front of the group. But then we could blow for the back of the hall like an orchestra group does, and you start to get this audience involvement. It's like an oversized string quartet. The lines are there, and the ability's there to involve the whole room. Why not?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So the string quartet equivalent of that is very vivid. If you ever listen to this, it's the Borodin String Quartet, which was like the national group of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Them playing the Borodin String Quartet or Shostakovich Eighth Quartet. There was like an incredible brass playing to their string quartet, straight sounds that just stand like mountainous compared to the rest of the string playing that they're doing in the piece. And it's like, no doubt they're thinking symphonic when they're playing.
Yeah. And
so the four becomes whatever number they want it to be, including four. And it could be that skinny. So this float like a butterfly, sting like a bee thing, you know, we got attracted to. And that's on that Chicago Symphony Brass Quintet record.
Wow, yeah.
They shouldn't be playing it. So it should be against the law how soft they could play on their big instruments.
Yeah.
But that dispels a lot of things about, you know, methodology. It's sounds that knock you out.
Yeah.
And of course, for me, like everybody in my generation, there was another thing that knocked you out. Was how to play in an orchestra was Alexander Nevsky with Jacobs, and it was that sound. It was all, you know, you could just go right down the list and just be transfixed. You know, you have to pull your car over.
Yeah, that's for sure.
You know, I mean, it's because you're going to listen so deeply. You
Yeah.
shouldn't be allowed to operate heavy equipment. You know, but those models became religious to us, and they were never really words. They skipped the brain. They went straight down into the thrill of it.
Yeah.
You know,
to
straight to the heart and the emotion of it. Yeah, exactly.
I find it inconceivable that anybody watching this right now would not know who you are, but just in case somebody doesn't, Sam Pilafian taught at Berklee College of Music in Boston University, Arizona State University,
right, yeah.
University of Miami, founding member of the Empire Brass Quintet, and currently with Boston Brass.
20 years later, like Rip Van Winkle.
Yeah, yeah.
Come
So,
back like that. Yeah.
welcome.
Oh, it's good.
Thanks for
Good to see you.
We're
friends.
Our paths
We
have
go
crossed
back
a few times in the past. I'm happy to say.
Don't act like we're introducing ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. So, but also you had some studies with Mr. Jacobs and some really great experiences.
Spectacular, yeah.
Maybe,
this is really a history segment.
That's what I'm thinking.
But the coolest thing about my career is many times with many highly elevated people in our lives, you know, I've been in the room, not necessarily a principal in the conversation even, I mean, but in the room over and over and over again. I was like, I never caught what was going on until I got this old. I start looking back, it was like people start talking about these monumental things that happened. I was like, yeah, I saw that. You know, it's amazing how many times in my life. So, for instance, I took some lessons with Arnold Jacobs in my life, but he used my office in New York City to teach when the Chicago Symphony was in New York. So I listened to great tuba players and not great tuba players, which he was even more excited about, play in my room and had a little folding chair in the back corner like I wasn't there. Hour after hour, I'd just wipe everything out and just sit there all day. We'd go to lunch together, and I would get a lesson for that. You know, for the rent I was the last lesson.
Right.
Before he had to go to the hall, and I'd walk him to the hall. So that was an amazing thing, you know. So as you can imagine, I just took to get a dose like that, and it would be a couple days, and it would be 4 or 5 times a year like that. That sometimes they were so hot in New York, it would actually be 5 times that they would be coming through town. It was like astonishing. But they could excite Carnegie Hall like no other, you know.
Would you what brought you first to decide to seek out Mr. Jacobs' teaching?
My teacher, Connie Wheldon, was a hybrid from New York teaching of Bill Bell and William Bell, and some other people that she knew, like Bill Evans, who taught Harvey Phillips. He retired to Florida, and it was a really nice situation for her to be close to some of these high-level players, and Mr. Jacobs was one of them. He had family down in Florida, and the orchestra came down there as well, and she had a lot of contact with them as well as formal study. She played a Shoki mouthpiece in his by his prescription, played his way, and that was a big deal when the New York, sort of in her life, when the New York school sort of flowed over towards the Jacobs school. That happened because she was in the Kansas City Orchestra, and she could get up there. She could, you know, she was in the zone, not in Miami, which was a long way away in those days. But a life changer for her, and never looked back as far as being of smaller stature and a smaller lung capacity and learning what she could do to use it well. It made her brave. She never looked back. She never doubted herself.
He must have been very encouraging to her, just because he knew that the smaller lung capacity wasn't a deal breaker to be a tuba player. You just had to change your bow more often.
And be a good manager.
Yeah,
I mean, I was like, but awesome, just awesome, because here's how it turned out. Connie Wheldon and Gail Williams and I have basically the same exact adult lungs. So they're about half of what one needs. You know, it's like when you're really thinking about it.
Yeah.
But isn't it fortuitous to fall in love with the small music for me? Because it's like, I just believe that's a natural order of things. Like, I always thought combo was the coolest thing in jazz ed.
Yeah.
And I always thought that it was really cool that other groups, like trombone quartets and sax quartets, things that you see breaking out early in high school maybe for contests, maybe a brass quintet, but it's sometimes these light ensembles pop up quicker, like clarinet quartet. When those were exciting to me. I mean, so I just want you to understand, like, for a long time, that was a big deal to me. Like, and that's where I ended up chasing down my career. My body is the right size for that. But the other thing was, Jacobs was a really important person for me to be talking to, because I wanted to miniaturize how he plays in an orchestra. So there's 2 role models for me as far as how to drive the bus at the bottom of chamber music, would be with his everything, like sound, his tuba playing, and the authority given to him by the quartet of the board and string quartet, the cellist. The cello player led from the bottom, and the great master Dubinsky was at the top. He had great opinions and stuff, but he trusted that guy so much that he literally was driving the platform that this guy was putting icing on. Talk about cooperation. So does that not sound like Herseth and Jacobs? Does that? So I chased him down for that. I was like, I gotta get this so I can play my little tuba, and that's what he was a great help with, based on an old King tuba, but the parts were such that we're sitting at about an inch as a 687 bore, and he's sitting at a 750 bore with his horn.
Right.
But was very American in his upbringing in terms of tuba sound, so he knows that bore really well. That's Harvey Phillips. That's like a lot of his friends growing up, as a tuba player. So he was of great help to maximize that, to make you stop thinking about how this doesn't blow or feel like this big tuba that looks like it belongs in an orchestra. You know what I mean? Like, it never looked like that. But he made that that arc for me. That was an imagination shift. It was like I could image this and chase it down, and all of a sudden I start breathing a different way, like I'm filling her up. Like,
this was Jacobs.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was that. There was the. I have finger pitch at that time. I was a bass player a lot, so I had finger pitch instead of valve pitch.
Yeah.
Which is, this is like, I get totally now looking back at that, but what a confusing time that was, because other people were hooking up to their saxophone fingerings and trumpet fingerings, and the tuba thing wasn't happening. And then I started sight reading, and I caught myself sight reading with my left hand. So it was like, okay, don't freak out. It's just doubler's disease, It's like, I had some wiring that was in the other direction, and I kind of liked that, actually. It was nice to be able to see things on a fingerboard, but I needed to stop it. I needed to life happened that I was seeing Mr. Jacobs at the time when it was a chance to be not a doubler anymore, but the Empire Brass. So it would be tuba all the time. And if it's going to be tuba all the time, I need to be able to do everything I can do on the bass on the tuba, because I think like a bass player, and I believe that I should be at the bottom of this brass quintet with that mentality, but I can't do everything I can do on that fingerboard. Mm-hmm. So I made sure that I was going to free myself up enough to do that. That's why this all got active.
So in your first lesson or two, he went after the... What did he go after? The breathing with you, or what else? What was it that he wanted?
Unbelievable. The first thing was he married me from he was the every time you walk by the piano exercise. So every time you walk by the piano, you play 10 notes in the tuba range, and you try to pick them off exactly with the mouthpiece.
Yeah.
But with me, he did that because I had a good ear, but it wasn't connected to the tuba. So what I had to do was I had to play the note exactly on the mouthpiece and with the fingering at the same time. So he started and like, boom. So we did, like, I forget why it happened, but there were 2 lessons that were pretty close together, like a week or something like that. And this thing really set. And that there was this moment when I'm sitting there memorizing something, and I realized for the first time, I know it sounds funny, but for the first time, I'm sitting here like 22 years old or something like that, using this hand. 22 years old. I started music way earlier than that. Mm-hmm. So it's a funny disconnect, but a really cool one, because I still hear like a bass player, and that's the sound of the Empire Brass. It's mm-hmm. like it's this blend of concept that comes from a bowed instrument, and that's why all the rotary breathing and the breathing gym, and it's like, you know what I mean? It's like the breathing obsession was to complete the phrases, or to carry the band across, so that these are high artists, as you know. As we know, but to carry them off as heroes, make them look good, is going to require beyond-o kind of support. Beyond-o is a Miami word for a lot. So those kind of moments in life are like, I always thought that coolest hot dog trick I could learn was from Ellis Ween, would be how to rotary breathe. Yeah. Because he got it from Chester. It's handed down, All of a sudden I was using them every day, just to get a little further through the bar, so that the phrases were believable and not chopped liver. Yeah. Right. So it's like, so he got into this thing because he was a bass player. Yeah. In the summers he was a bass player at WGN, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, he played the bass. Was a bass player. He thought like a bass, and that's why I went crazy, because he had the best arco sound ever. But it was a tuba. It was like the greatest.
Isn't that true?
I heard.
Really was.
I'm a German bow guy, I heard this guy playing a German bow with a nut in the middle of the sound,
Yeah.
which every great tuba player has to have, or you can't hear them. You can't follow them. They can't hold an orchestra up if there's no middle. His middle came from a bow concept.
It did.
And,
it really did.
you know, of course he was a singer, and a lot of line came from bow, a lot of line came from song, from him.
I've always thought his sound was like a
I
reminiscent of
I
a,
feel him pull it.
from
Like
a heavily
listen to
rosin bow.
Alexander Nevsky, he's pulling it, and then he's going through the notes,
Yeah.
and it sounds just like he's pulling a bow through the notes. Or at least, at the time when I was contemplating, I had this one of those great moments in life to say, that's the greatest thing I ever heard, and I should sell my horn, and the gas station job sounds really good to me right now. But that's how good that sounded to me. It's like, that was the choice in life. I'm going to chase that, or I'm going to get out a white handkerchief and just go make some money and forget it. Because that's like, what? But that's how much I loved it. I loved it, so I never made that choice. I would chase that. Are you kidding? That's like the most attractive sound I ever heard. You know?
What was
Very bass derivative, though. He could get with those bass players, you know, with the color and mentality. Playing marches or march-like material.
Yeah.
He's right on the bass players. They respect people like that. You know, this is awesome. Small side trip. So I played a lot of bass in New York City because there's tons of jobs and there's some tuba jobs. So I used to, my only rule was I brought the tuba with me every bass job, and I would always fit it in there somewhere. Everybody remembered that, so you get more work and more fun too. They started, the old guys that played in the Tommy Dorsey band and the Glenn Miller band, and they all sort of retired, got off the road and stayed in New York and played Broadway shows or recording sessions and stuff like that. A lot of those guys asked me if I knew a bass player named Abe Torchinsky. And I said, yeah, I know a bass player named Abe Torchinsky. Tell me more about that. He says, yeah, he was a great bass player. He used to do the same thing you did. He used to bring his tuba and play when Yuba plays the tuba, and, you know, all that stuff, and have a great time. But what a bass player. You know? Mm-hmm. So that's the same with Jacobs. The two of them, I saw them in Miami Beach when I was a high school student. They were at Miami Beach Auditorium, and it's, I think, the Jackie Gleason Theater. I forget how it is, but they were in two very close things. So Abe was off, so he was sitting on the equipment thing, and the Chicago Symphony was playing Beethoven, and they were just sitting there talking. And that was astonishing because they were talking bass. They were swapping bass player stories. How's that?
Yeah, how about that?
About no amps, about kids with amps and how they're learning to get technique because they're touching it, but that they were having to pull it like it was a bow and arrow.
Yeah.
They were talking about that. They were talking about 8 dynamics in the dance bands. Like if the crowd got loud, the band got louder. It's like if they couldn't hear the bass player, they start looking over at the bass player. I'm sitting there watching this conversation go down. And then they go back to work as tuba players in major symphony orchestras. The best, our best. Good mentality to have. That's what it's like being back in Boston Brass for me, is a lot of those Jacobs ideas of how to get at this at the beginning of Empire. Now it's way at the beginning of something else, and for me it's F tuba. It was the different. I played upright in Empire Brass, and I play electric in this band, and that makes sense because it's a Latin band. It's Latin derived. These people are virtuoso players that were brought up on a solfege bass that really makes all of us in America jealous. I mean, they're handed an ear that can hear because of general music of all things. And then when they get serious, they give them even more advanced rhythmic and ear training. But they're rewarded for their soloistic efforts, and then they can even get an orchestra job. Like they go and audition after they've won solo prizes. So this is all of a sudden it's got wide, dynamic, beautiful, colorful, but on a completely different scale. And then this.
Upright being the double C tuba.
The
electric being the F tuba.
The contrabass tuba and bass tuba, no doubt. And bass tubas like we have now did not exist in the Empire.
No.
It had to be. Harvey was the model for that. Like what to play, something that's honest. It's in C, and everything I found that was like that was the same bore, 687 every time. So there was an American flexible C tuba sides that really helped the big city tuba players because they just carry this one instrument all over town.
Right.
They just do whatever it was, you know. So they used to call them subway tubas. So this period of time when I had an office in New York City, and it was a walk from Carnegie Hall. It was beautiful, and it was in a quiet neighborhood, so it was off towards the Hudson River. And Mr. Jacobs would come up there and would set him up, and I'd be like his waiter, and be in the back. And I didn't record everything. I'm a note taker. I love doing that, and it's really gets in my head when I do that. But I also try to remember sound. So instead of recording it, if there's any musical example, I try to do that. So I even give numbers to when somebody played, like, Jacobs demo, blah, blah, blah. It's like, in parentheses. Mm-hmm. And I try to remember what that sounds like, because that means more to me than if I record it, because I might not listen to it. But I can remember things when I try to install them that way.
Yeah.
That's my biggest memory of him over those years, using the studio and picking up the horn. Number one, he always played a quarter step flatter than everybody else played their horn. I feel like, when I was a kid, and at that time I was a kid, so I'm listening and I'm not, I can't hear as well as I hear now, but in different layers. But to me, he was more open than everybody else, and that's why he was in a lower pitch set that was stable. It was like, it's like the minute you heard it was like, that's how you're supposed to blow that too, but how depressing that he did that to everybody who ever picked the horn up. It was like he optimized that horn. It says, oh, that's too bad. If you had a 353cc engine, it would sound like this. It's like unbelievable test pilot, this guy.
Yeah, it wasn't the tuba, it was the player.
It was an unbelievable test pilot. Yeah, he would find it, he would catch it doing this much right and like grow it. Boom, like that. If you slowed it down, you'd probably be able to see the process of how the ear did that for him. But oh my goodness! But then you start thinking about it. It's like a bass player's ears. The bass players sit at the bottom of music and listen to the top, so they hear up. He's the quintessential citizen of an orchestra. He's a soloist, and you can build an entire orchestra on that person. So I came to him to miniaturize some ideas to make sure that you don't have to be that deep into it to get some of those sounds that were so incredible that I was hearing. And that's when I learned much more from him than I thought it was going to, because it was about scale and relaxation and characteristic sound. Mm-hmm. And once you achieve the characteristic sound and you got that tension out, and you have that true flow, that then what you're thinking starts to come out the horn without obstruction. So that was the concept of Empire was possible because it was a very neutral time in my life. Very sort of erased the blackboard of things that were probably wrong since junior high,
Yeah, right.
That kind of thing.
So just because you had just a very large number of people coming to your studio to study with Jacobs when CSO was in New York.
Yeah, I watched Floyd lessons, a couple that I remember, just been sitting in the back. And Toby lessons, for sure, every time. He always took a lesson. Steve Johns, Tony Price, all the New York tuba players.
Was there some sort of a message that you remember, or messages that just come?
That was a time in his life. Yeah, it was a time in his life when, so we're talking underlying theme. Yeah, definitely he was prescriptive as anybody I've ever seen in my life. But his current that was running through his lessons were to take people from the mechanical and over to the musical, and he was very good at that. So I ended up, I think I brought this up to you before once. Where are those people, when I sat in those lessons, that I'd never heard of before, and they played excerpts, and it was like, how is this person not in a big job? That's like the best I've ever heard. Like, you could hear the whole orchestra around that excerpt. It was like a great actor playing it. That was a great musician.
Yeah.
And I've never seen or heard from those people again. They were flying in, some of them,
wow.
Like from upstate New York and New England, or taking the train in, because he didn't go any further than New York. He didn't go any further north.
Yeah.
But I heard these people, and it makes you wonder. And also during that time I was in New York, I started to work in the recording industry, like with Empire being so busy in it. Then you start meeting people, and they're like, why don't you come to the session, and you can learn this and learn that. It started to be, free time started to be lurking around those people. And the same thing happened. I would go with record execs to go hear groups, like jazz groups, maybe even more pop than that, and classical groups with the other division of the same company. and be blown away and never hear from those, and then it never happened. It's like they got signed and nothing ever. It's just the timing of it or whatever. But some of the greatest live performances I ever heard, and in anonymity. There was like, I went to a bowling alley and heard Kool and the Gang for the first time, like before they were famous or anything like that, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. I was like, and then they got famous, and then that was the first time I went with somebody, and I thought to myself, okay, this is how you make it, you know, in New York. This is it. You got to be that good. And then many times past that, I heard groups better than that, and they never made it at all. So the reason for that story is that's what I talked about with Jacobs when we went to have. He had this restaurant that he used to call Sam's Place. It was called the King Crab. I used to eat in there every time I was anywhere close to the place because they had fresh seafood that came from the colder waters of the northern Atlantic. So it was right there. So it was like kingfish is that, and then of course the cold water clams and crabs and stuff like that. I used to love to eat that. So that's where lunch was. And then we get into what did you see kind of thing, like what did you notice this or did you notice that? I was like, do you hear what I hear? Kind of questions or what happened over lunch.
Yeah.
And so the thing that I would be the most off on when I was young would be to, you know, what we all do is like look over here or watch here or offer an observation. And he says, what did you see? And I was like, well, he was lifting, you know, some symptomatic thing that wasn't the root. And so over crabs and spaghetti, you know, like I was learning the form and learning these things in a very interesting lesson format.
Yeah. Right.
You know, over a meal table, and that's awesome. I can't tell you how many times that happened. He came to Miami with William Bell to judge the first tuba ensemble composition contest at the University of Miami. The judges were Frederick Fennell, who taught at Miami, Clifton Williams, Alfred Reed, they taught at Miami, and then these two legendary tuba players. And they chose from 8-part down to 3-part pieces, and the finals were, they listened, and we played the finals live, and they stayed at the motel where that my parents owned. So I got to be close with my family, and Jacobs especially. He visited down there a couple times, stayed down there a couple times. So Mr. Jacobs, during that time, really was of great help to all of that tuba ensemble stuff, in that he gave it credence. He really thought that, you know, he would talk, you know, in between he was talking to the ensemble because they had to judge scores and whatever they were doing. He would come talk to everybody we were sort of at the ready to form whatever group it was they needed to hear, whatever piece they needed to hear. And he was talking about how you got to listen above the group. You have to hear the chords that are, you know, ear games, like you know, do you hear what I hear? Like when I hear it, if it causes that to happen, it's a good composition. So the question was, do these people know enough to write A to get B to happen? Or are they hearing it harmonically while they're writing it so they hear B? You know, in other words, their intention is B, is the harmonic implication that's bigger than 3 people or 4 people or whatever it is. But that's what he was posing. So it was like, got it right into it. You know, the potential. I remember one point, it was over 2 days, he said, that's the most I've ever heard tuba choir music or whatever. It wasn't tuba ensemble, but like that's the most I've ever heard that kind of music.
Yeah. That's cool. So just talking about the Bill Bell and Mr. Jacobs being down in Miami judging tuba ensemble literature competition, that reminds me that, you know, a lot of people think that the tuba ensemble really started at IU with Mr. Bell, but it actually preceded and had to do with Connie Wheldon.
Yeah, there's a feeling down in Miami. There was this tradition, and as I've traveled many countries and seen many different tuba cultures, this one was built around fishing and shooting pool, and there was this brotherhood, you know, among these tuba players with a queen who was Connie, and she was a great pool shot. She played on the Jackie Gleason show, and she used to shoot pool with Jackie Gleason, who was a virtuoso. She was a virtuoso. She beat him maybe once out of every time she ever played.
She beat Fats?
But she beat fake Fats.
Fake Fats.
But it was like,
Fats.
So Connie was a fisherman, and many of the students and myself, we are loving fishing. So we would talk tuba out on the water, and then everybody would meet up on the shore and all for free. Just go there and we barbecue the mackerel cod or whatever it was and have a great time. Talk tuba the whole time, and that started to spur this whole. So like a piano teacher, when the kids who take lessons do a recital every month, we would go fishing and have a good time, and that started to turn into a tuba ensemble thing. So the only music was from the Salvation Army. You could get Eric Ball and you could get Cook, these people that wrote some tuba ensemble music. And so her luck was that she was working in 1960 or so when they started this with Clifton Williams, Alfred Reed, Paul Yoder, all these people who were quick writers and many jazz writers who were down there at Big Jazz School. And they were of great help to crank out some early music so that they would have some stuff to play. So they were adopted by a lot of writers, a lot of quick arrangers, Jackie Gleason show musicians. There were some phenomenal writers within the instrumental pit, and they contributed. And then we started getting some serious contributors like Tuck Wu, who went into a state of continual arranging. He was like credited for so many arrangements in that library, everything from occasional music to ceremonial music. And then Roger Jones, who's a major composer, studied with Clifton Williams, got his doctorate down there and created many important pieces for that group. I mean, a legacy there, and he just retired from his college teaching job as a composition professor. So there was this culture all built around what used to be the feel of the studio, which she was incredible at doing. And then it came out into a tuba ensemble in a very natural way. It's like, if we're having this much fun, let's play together. And I remember being 13 or 14. It was like a rehearsal band. I think I was the youngest by a bit. But then there was definitely 17-year-olds. There were definitely high school seniors she was recruiting to go to Miami. Back when they used to wait till the senior year to recruit people. But at any rate, it was a culture that flowed right into music making. And the family feel of it was awesome. And the university adopted it. It used to be fun music for occasions. It's like if we didn't play things, they wanted to know where we were. If we weren't part of ceremonies and
they got used to you.
Rathskeller ceremonies and fun and retirements, and so she taught us how to be professional. Like guys booked the tuba ensemble. We had a steady gig on Wednesday nights at the Rathskeller on campus. But there was a family built up around it. So you can see why, in my career, what I did. I wanted to surround myself with people and be a band, like a rock band is, or a jazz band. Like, you own 20% of this. Let's see how far we can take it. And it was the same with that tuba ensemble. And that's the first time I played with grown-ups was that.
Wow.
You know what I mean? It's like when you get that chance to play above your age group, it's always a gas.
Yeah, it's exciting.
That was it for me. And the first night I walked in there, Roger Bobo was playing a solo piece that he wrote. Not Roger Bobo, Roger Jones. And it involved like having a balloon on one of the tuning slides so it would blow up and water in another one. And I thought, wow, I'm not sure I can, hang out with these guys. I mean, they're a little weirder than Miss Wheldon said. I was afraid. I was afraid of the guy. It was the first time I was saying he's blowing balloons up on his tuba. But they were experimentalists, and they really took that spirit of adventure right into tuba ensemble.
Yeah.
It was a gas.
He wrote those set of duets, right? That he dedicated to Miss Wheldon?
Yeah, and he wrote the duets, and he wrote a piece. It was all a blind competition for that thing, and he ended up being fourth prize for that as well. That was won by Franklin Payne, that tuba quartet that a lot of us know. It's very Stravinsky-like, and then there was another one by Marcel Franck that was for 5 tubas, or euphoniums and tubas, pieces like that. Let's talk about Lew Soloff straight up, the passing of.
Yeah, well, I was so thankful and grateful that he agreed to let my daughter Emily and I come in and, as well as Puddles, come in and talk to him. But I had no idea. One of the things about doing this project is Jacobs has really become this like 4D, not just 3D, but 4D figure. I mean, I knew a lot about him before starting this project, but he just cast such a wide net. And just to hear Mr. Soloff talk about how he used to go fly from
regularly
New York, when he was in Blood, Sweat, and Tears, he would fly out monthly to get lessons with Jacobs.
He would talk to me. So the reason I know him, I knew him from freelancing in New York, and it was fun. It was always different styles, and I remember one disco record where Jon Faddis was playing, and Lew and Marvin Stamm and all these famous trumpet players. But Lew was playing second to Jon Faddis, and Lew hit a trumpet F sharp, and Jon Faddis hit a trumpet G sharp over the staff for 1:10 at the end of this disco record. They just kept going bah 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 bah, and if I was running an off-track betting parlor, we could have gotten rich because of the excitement of, are they going to make it without cracking one? You know, it must have been like a winning streak, you know. But they made it the whole way. So he could do that, and he could do poetry on the trumpet. And the best part is he was on the session for Wide World of Sports. I'm playing on that. I'm the agony of defeat. But he was the thrill of victory in there and it was like Phil Smith and Mark Gould and all these people, and Vince Penzarella, people from the New York Philharmonic and the Met, and Lew. And the reason why they always had Lew in there is he could really play section trumpet because of the training, the Jacobs thing. Like, he could really play like a member of the section. They loved that because they could do it with Jon Faddis or people like that, but depending on what they are doing right then, it could be like pure lead.
Yeah.
But here's a guy that's really sitting in the flexible meat and potatoes register of the trumpet a lot of the time, kept him really healthy. He had low notes, like on flugelhorn. Like, so all this culminated, because we got a chance to do a lot of cool things over the years. And then Pink Floyd did The Wall, and Michael came and they had these people retained. So you were on call, and as they wrote this over months in the same recording studio, they would have you come in and record it or layer things at whatever time. It's like, you know, those things run like 24 hours a day anyway. Yeah. And you'd walk in the room, and it was retained in the brass was Lew Soloff, Jimmy Pugh, and myself. So there's like horn writing where it's Jimmy Pugh in a bucket, and I'm up in the high register of the tuba, and they mixed it up. It sounds like the horn chords, you know. Right. So we're doing all kinds of things like that. But stacks of paper wadded up on the floor from rewrites. Like, people, I've never seen people rehearse harder than them, and I've never seen more creative ruthlessness to get to the truth of something. But I'm sure that's what a lot of people go through. It was fun to be able to see that go down, because it became the #1 album of the year and the Grammy and all. In other words, if you work that hard, this is what could happen. What a lesson that was. But it's not without pain. I mean, you know, they really went through a lot. But that was a lot of waiting time and a lot of fun layering time with Lew Soloff. And when he started hearing the high register like that and the relaxation, he immediately glommed onto me after a take and was like, you ever study with Arnold Jacobs? Do you ever take a lesson with Arnold Jacobs? You know, like right away. And I said, yeah. Matter of fact, I was just thinking about him just now when I was way up there. You know, it's like, and then that's when it all started coming out, how regular a student he was and how much he knew about what he needed to do. And that kept him really healthy. So yeah, it was, but that very direct contact made friends for us. And so if I saw him at a jazz party or a university appearance of his or something near me where I was teaching, it was always a good thing, and we always played something. So, and I miss him, you know. And then, you know, Rolf died this year, and it was shocking, you know. So it's the end of Empire, you know, like officially. It's like we're the first member, you know. Yeah. So, the flood of memories that brought back on, a lot of people saw that on Facebook. It's incredible. Yeah. It's incredible to know that he touched that many people with that sound. Yeah. And again, going all the way back to sound, you know, brings it for people. They don't need words. If they hear a sound like that, they just get taken to another place. Yeah. It's an emotional thrill, you know, and that's where what I think about, that level is what I think about when I think about Jacobs. I think about him like that. I think about Rolf like that, as far as like people trying to get to an incredible ease and resonance. They're looking for, not too many people I ever met were looking to resonate an entire space or an entire area, like resonate the place, not just play great. It's like beyond, we're setting the body up so, you know, in the right acoustic, a miracle could happen. You know, it's that kind of thing. I think that these people that we revere for their sounds really are sound, really living in that sound world, purely in that sound world. You can't, there's no science that can get you that sound, ever, 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 never. So the quality of hearing of that individual has to be incredible. So probably the most undersung thing for me and what I learned from Mr. Jacobs was that hear it and buzz it exactly, put my bass ear onto the tuba, and I took off on the tuba. So I owe him that, if nothing else. That was the quickest fix I ever saw in my life. I did that for about 3 days, and I was like, because I never tried that before, and it's like, bang, it buzzed exactly. And all of a sudden, everything I heard, I could play back to you. You know what I mean? It was like, what happened? What happened?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the Lone Ranger. It's like I used to think about Jacobs like sitting there blowing the smoke out of the gun barrel. So that's another one. I just nailed another one. Put the thing back in, the silver bullet. It's the keeper of the silver bullets. You do this activity, and all these things that were bugging you about your playing are going to get better. But to see him do it was as valuable as to play for him and get the lesson. Just it seemed like the whole thing was a lesson.
Did you have any experiences as part of the crowd with Jacobs and Herseth before or after some of those CSO shows?
Yeah, so he would teach and they would play the orchestra concert, and there was a lot of times they wanted to try a restaurant or something like that, and we would end up a lot of times at a sushi place. They both like sushi. So I sat there one time in very near the orchestra's hotel, a great basement sushi bar, and sitting there with the two of them, just talking. I'm just sitting there keeping the sushi rolling, and from 11:15 at night till about 4:15 in the morning. Unbelievable to sit there and listen to them talk about conductors and same piece, different conductor kind of discussion. It was like, it's amazing.
Did you learn anything from them as far as the way they carried themselves, or were?
Well, I have learned something. When people are older than you and they're virtuosos, they sound incredibly young to you. There's a youthfulness to their approach. Mm-hmm. It belies their age. And I've heard it in piano, I've heard it in violin, and we know that. We've heard old Horowitz light it up.
Yeah.
So there's a light of life. Fennell did that when he was really of age. I mean, in his later years. He would have these performances and people would just be astonished, and then he would slope down and sort of shuffle off the stage,
mm-hmm.
And be 80-something again, That's what I remember about, the Jacobs Herseth thing. We soloed, when I met you, we soloed with Empire Brass at Ravinia with the Chicago Symphony.
Yeah.
We got there the early evening and we got a chance to go to Ravinia and hear the Alpine Symphonie. And Adolf Herseth is sitting there, 69 years old, and he played. To me, that's the hardest thing ever for trumpet. I don't know what was Strauss thinking? He's trying to get somebody, but it's the most beautiful, lyrical, most delicate, and it's the most powerful, and it's the highest and the lowest. And he says, that he wrote something in which the trumpet players have to sit there and think to themselves, how much does this pay? When they're going through it. Yeah. He made it sound like it was his jury, and he nailed all the lyrical parts and all the, it was like a shopping list of how to play the trumpet, and he nailed the whole thing. So I'm waiting by the stage door, and he comes bursting out the stage door, and he sees me, and we're food friends, right? So he sees me, and he goes, Sam, pretty good for 69 years old, huh? That's just awesome to me. That he was walking out of that place like a kid, like All-State Band. And what year was that? I mean, how many years in was that? It was incredible. Yeah, it was like earlier 80s than that. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Like that, 83, 84.
So that's, but anyway, just unbelievable. And then Erich Kunzel told me a story about Mr. Jacobs and Mr. Herseth playing in the orchestra, and he saw the brass players, and he came back there and he said, like, I make really large gestures, and that's just for the audience, please don't make me go off the back of the podium. And he said, and it was his first time at the Chicago Symphony, and he dropped a downbeat, and they were just going to work. It was just a morning rehearsal, and he went off the back of the podium. He actually did. Wow. So they had such a thrill here's a conductor who was going everywhere, playing with everybody, and then he got hit with it. he got pushed over at the sternum.
Yeah.
By the sound that was coming from that line. And that was the greatest Jacobs moment. That the one you'll never forget is a sound picture that's like, that you're hearing it, and you're lucky you heard it. Was being at the rehearsal, waiting to do the solo stuff with the Chicago Symphony, meant we could be on stage. So they're doing fanfare for the common man, and we're right at the place. We're like looking right down the brass line, and they're watch them in rehearsal. And the first time the whole brass section plays, it's exactly the same inhale, and it's like I'm a very imaginative guy, but I'm telling you the truth. This was real. That it felt like Jacobs was breathing the entire brass section, because it's a family of breathing. It's a school of breathing. But it really was, the sensation to me was like one person breathes, the whole brass section goes. It's like organ stops. It was incredible.
Speaking of breathing, what aspect of the study that you had, and both you and Patrick studied with Mr. Jacobs during your career, earlier in your career, what would you say you bring? What was his contribution to the breathing gym?
The situation with Patrick is that's not the same breath. Patrick had up one side, down the other. He's like the $6 million man when it comes to studying with Mr. Jacobs. He really had a thorough every type and kind because of that. Well, for one reason, because of civic, but other good contact, and then that great Marine band contact. Thank you, Frank Byrne. So those good contacts gave him a thing that why I sought him out, because I've been doing this breathing thing ever since I figured out I wasn't going to be very big. So it's like, I taught the first breathing class in 1976. I tried to take on everything I could and learn everything about Jacobs. That was not that hard, because in Florida there's a lot of Jacobs people, like really close to him. So it was easier for me to jump in a car and just sit with people and try to understand, some of these great proponents of that, and try to put that into these exercises so that people would, like now it's Nike, you like that, Buttles. They just need to do it. We're trying to turn Jacob style, pedagogy into a just do it and find yourself in it, in a very musical place, and who cares how you got there, but you're relaxed and you're breathing and all of your body mapping and your musculature is relaxed, it's like everything's in a great place. And that's not the way it would have been. You would have had to get serious about this and then go to Chicago, like back in the day, and just study with Jacobs, or go to a master class. And there weren't a lot of them. He was a very busy person. So access was not what it is today, and that caused, that's a big part of why people, needed to do this. But for us, we were, needed to go to Chicago and go to that special building and go in that special room and have that special thing, and there's nothing like that. Those people know a lot. The ones who went in there a lot know a lot. This was to get this done like Henry Ford did the car. We would like for that to proliferate. We would like for bands to incorporate that so that people don't start wrong. And then we'll have less to talk about, but I'm sure there'll be some other issues, along the way. But it was to popularize it. It was a populist approach. What can we do to get this done? And so now, because it's a play therapy, and if you keep doing the play therapy, you keep going down a Jacobs agenda of, the proper mapping, the proper mental goals, or the proper musical goals, allowing so many physical things to happen. It's all in there, but in non-invasive ways. They don't need to know anything. If you do this, you're going to end up in a place where music could take over at any minute. That's what the goal is. And now, because of that, we know that a Jacobs type pedagogy, based on real natural and holistic approach to playing the instrument, and then letting the ear develop to where it can hear gorgeousness and recreate it, can happen with the Concord Blue Devils. like last summer, like no one's seen a score like that. And it's like, not that music can be scored, but why would it jump up that high? The only difference was the breathing thing, in really intense doses, you know. And music broke out. They took ownership of the show. Intonation was not an issue at all, and balance was not an issue at all. So it's a very special thing. That can happen. That's why we know we can scale Jacobs with this breathing gem.
Yeah.
And there's been some fun things that have happened. The big marching bands in college that do it. It's
Right.
amazing that 327 people can do Arnold Jacobs in a basic way, and then build their band on that, and that's what it sounds like. And there are sounds people have never heard before, because we've never heard a whole group of people be healthy before.
Right.
Musically
right.
healthy and physically healthy.
Yeah. Anything else that?
Yeah, I think that everybody has possible occurrences that happen with Mr. Jacobs that might not be in a lesson. It might not be in a normal relationship.
Yeah.
And for me, it was a great occurrence when Empire Brass was on tour, and we were asked to divert to Chicago because Maurice Andre was supposed to do a trumpet recital, and he got sick. He couldn't play it. So we went on one day's notice. We diverted, I remember, from Washington, D.C., and we went to Chicago. We played at Orchestra Hall, and it was wonderful to play for that audience. And in the front area of the best seats in the orchestra was the brass section and their families. And when it was over, we all went out for barbecue and walked the streets. And I was like 4 o'clock in the morning when we were all saying goodnight to each other. And it's like, what a night. And that was the Empire Brass with Rolf, myself, and Tim Morrison, Scott Hartman, and Marty Hackman. And so a lot of common friends, for them as orchestral members, and then I knew a lot of the people too. But it was just never forget that. And Mr. He'll never remember this, but George Vosberg got drunk that night, and he was walking underneath the L, screaming in the echo, "I'm in the Chicago Symphony," as loud as he could just yell. And Jacobs going over to Herseth and poking him in the arm and saying, "Kids." Kids.
That's a good one.
That was funny. You just never forget those things.
Yeah. Well, we are so thankful for you for coming and sharing those memories with us.
It's awesome. I'm glad we finally got a chance to talk, and thank you
Yeah.
for doing this. It's been great to
Yeah.
watch and listen to segments.
And I really, again, appreciate the teaching that you've done for so many people, myself included.
Yeah, thank
You're
you.
a great example. I mean, just hearing you last year at ITech was inspiring. It's
thank you,
there
man.
he is again, back
Yeah.
at it.
But we stand on the shoulders, as Gene Pokorny has said many times, and so
Yeah,
it's
that's
like it's really a balancing act, and tuba players are good at it. They're good at taking care of each other.
Yeah.
And thanks for taking care of his legacy.
Well, speaking of taking care of people, Puddles has asked me to give you, as a token of our appreciation, this genuine Tuba People TV shirt.
Wow, that's raised letters. Check it out.
We hope you'll wear it
Wow.
in good health.
Texture. This is phenomenal. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Sam.
I'll talk to you.
And now back to you.